Hey everyone, and welcome to our last Progress Texas Happy Hour of 2020. I know I'm going to miss all of you. I'm sure you're going to miss seeing our four faces every Friday afternoon. Noon, not afternoon. I guess now it's afternoon, technically. Today we have an amazing show for you. We got Diana, Ed, Wesley, the whole gang is here, and we're going to talk about the best and the worst Texans of 2020. High stakes, very high stakes. Before we dive into that, team, I want to ask you a question. We're about to go on vacation until some point in the future. What are you most looking forward to? Diana, what about you?
I have decided to spend my time cutting my hairs individually, one by one. With the pandemic, I have not gone to get my hair cut. I have stood strong, but it's gotten like super long and I can't deal with it anymore. So just one by one.
That is a big vacation project. What about you, Ed?
Also going to be cutting my hairs one by one. I'm going to finish The Mandalorian, which I just started after the election, hadn't watched any of it. So I've been breezing through 2 seasons. And then I've heard amazing things about Ted Lasso. So I'll be diving into some lighthearted football, both American and European football. By the way, if anybody has any good show recommendations, I'm looking for ideas. Feel free to let me know. I'll probably do some winter hiking over the break too. Really looking forward to all of it.
I'll just put in Ted Lasso, one of my favorite shows of the year. Highly recommend it. And Wesley, what about you?
So I have quite a few things I'm looking forward to, but number one is definitely just catching up on sleep. I think that's like the top priority. But 2, and like one of my favorite parts of the holiday season is actually not even like presents or like buying the gifts, but wrapping them. I like really enjoy wrapping presents. So I'm very much looking forward to like wrapping all the gifts that I bought for people over these next couple of weeks.
I can't say that I love wrapping gifts, but I like that you like wrapping gifts, which is great. And I'm going to basically do what you said first. I'm going to sleep a lot and watch a lot of bad TV and eat a lot of Chinese food and call it a day. Because my wife's going to be at work, so what am I going to do otherwise, you know? Okay, let's get into what you're all really here to hear, which is who were the best and the worst Texans. And we're going to start at number 5 and slowly quickly make our way to number 1. So Ed, why don't you kick us off with who was number 5 for best and worst Texan of the year?
So on our best list of best and worst Texans, coming in at number 5 was the Castro brothers. Everybody knows Congressman Joaquin Castro, former mayor and former housing secretary Julian Castro. Both have had a big impact on Texas and on the nation over the past year. Obviously, Joaquin with all of his leadership in Congress, and then Julian in his run for president, taking bold positions, standing up for immigrant rights, standing up for people who are experiencing poverty, and really having a forward-looking vision. And what I love about what both did, but in particular Julian, was that he continued campaigning. Even when his presidential campaign ended, he went out there on the trail and continued to campaign for lots of people throughout the year, which, you know, a lot of people running for president did this year, but we don't always see that. So that was very encouraging, and I hope the Biden administration considers his diplomacy for a position, maybe an ambassadorship in the administration. As for coming in at our 5th worst, also a tie, we have the Dans. Kind of cheating there by taking 2 Dans and putting them together, but one was Congressman Dan Crenshaw from the Houston area, just all around kind of a shitty guy. And then Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor, who has done lots of things to earn the spot here. But the biggest one was going on Fox News in the spring and saying that he thinks that seniors should be willing to sacrifice their lives for the economy, which was wrong on so many levels. It's not just seniors who are vulnerable to COVID-19, but the fact that he would even make such a statement, that alone was enough to land him on our 5 worst Texans list of 2020 here at the end of the year.
I know. I asked my grandparents, and they said they were not willing to do that. So Dan Patrick makes crazy claims, also liar. Diana, you wanted to talk about who was number 4 for best and worst. Who do we got?
Yeah, so on number 4 for the best list, we have Representative Veronica Escobar out in the El Paso area. I had the amazing honor of interviewing her earlier this fall when she was running to get reelected, and right now she's just finishing up her first term. And, she's just been really great, especially at pointing out how the Latino, Latinx community has been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, and has, been a really great leader with a lot of, the stuff that has happened, out in her area. She has been a really great representative of the diversity of Texas and what it looks like for a strong woman of color to lead, and has really paved the way for other women of color Texans to run for office. So, really excited. It was really a cool moment to get to talk to her and ask her about her insight. For the number 4 worst Texans, we have the anti-maskers. It's pretty ridiculous how the decision to protect other fellow Texans became a political issue, but somehow it did. And it was, really weird. We still have them, walking around maskless right now. One thing I thought was really hilarious was that there are a lot of anti-maskers who are using the excuse of, well, it's my body, my choice. However, a lot of folks didn't feel that same way when it comes to abortion access and stuff like that. So, hopefully, they change their ways. But yeah, we're giving them the number 4 on the worst Texans, the naughty list.
And putting on a mask isn't even hard.
No.
Boom, it's on. Boom, it's off and you're back home.
And especially during the winter time, I love wearing a mask out in the cold. It keeps me warm.
And Wesley, you got number 3 for best and worst. Who we got?
Yeah, so coming in at number 3 for our best list is the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. And I would say, this year was marked by a lot of different things. We had, obviously, the pandemic, which is still ongoing, economic crisis, we had an election. But one of the huge things that happened this year were the protests that broke out around the country, the Black Lives Matters protests, in response to the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and police killings of so many other Black folks across our country. It was really an unforgettable social justice movement, and it's something that we need to continue working toward moving forward. We need to work toward criminal justice reform and work toward racial justice in our country. And the Legislative Caucus, the Black Legislative Caucus here in Texas, they've actually introduced already a George Floyd Act, which is just sweeping reform that would be introduced for our state when it comes to police. So it would do things like ban chokeholds and require law enforcement officers to intervene if their peers are acting out of just doing things they shouldn't be doing while on the job. And then we also want to point out and acknowledge that there are lots of Black leaders and Black-led organizations that have brought this movement where it is today. And so if you look through the blog, we have a link and it can actually take you to a piece that we have that highlights some of those different organizations as well.
And what I want to add on top of this, like one of the things that's so cool about the Texas Black Legislative Caucus coming out with these things so early is that the session doesn't even start until next year. They didn't skip a beat. They got together in a non-legislative year, put together some proposals and some packages and started pushing those things right away. And that just, that doesn't happen that often. And to see that, I think was heartening. And hopefully we can see some reforms come through this coming year.
And the Floyd family is from Texas, and the caucus actually worked with the Floyd family, I think, on some of this legislation as well, which is really important. So, all right. So coming in at number 3, we have, again, another tie. And I know we're kind of cheating with this, but we have John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. So we paired them together because they're both our U.S. senators. I think throughout the year, they've both been terrible. I think a lot of people are familiar with them. They're some of our favorite Texans to hate, especially when it comes to like the progressive side of things. But it's not because we just don't like them. It's because they're terrible people. So this entire year, Cornyn was up for re-election. Unfortunately, he ended up winning, but he tried to pass himself off as a moderate throughout the entire year because he was trying to get those votes, But Cornyn and Cruz vote together 95% of the time. Throughout this entire pandemic, they did very little to help Texans. At the beginning of the pandemic, Cornyn got a lot of flack because he posted a picture of Corona beer and really downplayed the virus with his tweet. They used racist dog whistles about Asian Americans. It's just throughout this entire year, their coronavirus response was not focused on actually helping Texans. It was just politicizing the issue and making it more divisive. And then when Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, both of the senators flip-flopped on their views from just 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, when Obama introduced Merrick Garland as a Supreme Court nominee, they weren't willing to even consider him because it was 2016 and it was an election year. Well, this year, Amy Coney Barrett was introduced in the midst of an election, and they were completely fine with the process and passed her through. So they've been Trump's lapdogs all along. They've done very little to work for Texans, and we're not happy that Cornyn ended up getting reelected. But one thing we are excited about is we're going to be revamping our Humans Against Ted Cruz campaign, and in 2024 we're going to be going after him. One thing I will point out is yesterday we put up a little preview to our list, and apparently it struck a nerve with Cornyn, and he actually quote tweeted us, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically called us out or blah blah blah, and we responded. But you can go look on Twitter and see that. I thought it was really interesting because all he does is just bring us more attention whenever he quote tweets us like that.
More attention to us saying bad things about him.
Exactly, more awareness to all the terrible stuff he's done this year. So.
Yeah, for a group of folks that talk about snowflakes so much, Cornyn takes offense to a lot of things really easily.
Quite sensitive.
Very much so.
Very sensitive.
There is.
It's a thing in the GOP. Okay, now we're on to number 2. And usually, if you look at our lists in the past, and even everyone we've talked about today so far, it's all individuals, usually people who are in politics or who are politicians. But the best, our number 2 for best Texans of the year is really all the frontline workers. When COVID-19 hit America, hit Texas, society could have stopped. But the doctors, the teachers, the grocery store workers, the custodial staff, all the people that kept us going, we really cannot thank you enough, because without you, we would not be here how we are today. And, I think I speak for the entire team at Progress Texas. We need to figure out how to do for you what you did for us. You are essential workers, and we need to be, our leaders need to treat you as such. So, I hope that the legislators are listening and seeing what's happening, because there needs to be a way to honor them beyond just calling them essential. We need to prove to them that they really are, and give them the things that they need to know it and to feel it and to take it home with them. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. Also, Nandita, my wife's a doctor. Love you. You've been doing an amazing job, and you and all your friends are keeping us safe. So thanks so much.
One thing you talked about, Satvik, that I think is so important is just we call these people heroes. We clap for them on the streets. We write articles about them and how important they are. But at the end of the day, we need to be doing what we can. So they deserve fair compensation. They deserve paid sick leave, affordable health care, and so many other things. These workers are literally keeping our communities going. They're keeping our society going. And we need to be compensating them fairly. And I think my parents are also nurses too. So this is a really important, frontline workers are so important to me. And I mean, really to everyone. They've literally kept us going this year, so.
And Melissa, do you want to tell us who's number 2 for the worst Texan of the year?
Yes. So number 2 for the worst Texan. One thing I'll add before saying this is this was really difficult. Between our 1 and number 2, they're both just so terrible. They could have very easily swapped. We actually had him as number 1 at one point, and then we decided to go another direction. But number 2 is our indicted Attorney General, Kim Paxton. We all know him, and we all know a lot of the things that he's done this year. We talked about him last week because he filed this ridiculous lawsuit in the Supreme Court to try to overturn the results of the election. If you haven't seen our video from last week, you should go watch it because we really go in depth and go in on how terrible Paxton is. But just a few of the highlights of things that he's done. He used the pandemic as an excuse to attack abortion care. So there were tons of back and forth lawsuits when the pandemic first started because he basically issued a ban on abortion. He also fought against every kind of effort to expand voting rights, to expand voting by mail. We knew that this pandemic was going to make it harder for people to vote. And so a lot of different activists across the state were working to make it to where everyone in our state could vote by mail. And he fought in the courts all year long to keep that from happening. And this whole time, he also had an affordable healthcare case in the Supreme Court, basically working to take healthcare away from millions of people. But what's funny is, he was in the court doing all of that while at the same time he was avoiding going to court himself. So Paxton has been accused of multiple different illegal activities. He's been under felony indictment for 5 years. Throughout the year this year, there were different stories that came out showing that he may have crossed a few ethical and legal lines. And then the huge story of the year is some of his top aides came out and accused him of bribery and abuse of office. Now there's an FBI investigation going on. Multiple publications and lawmakers have called on him to resign. So it really is just like anything you can think of that's bad, Paxton's probably had a hand in it. And what's even worse is that only gets him second on our list. So there's someone who's even worse coming up.
Yeah, and for all of Paxton's effort, he's not going to get that pardon that he really wants. We all know that this whole thing about the election was just to get a pardon, right? Like, let's be real. There's no proof.
Nice try.
Yeah.
He's really embarrassing and was not really representing Texas in the best way in the national news.
Yeah, we even sent out an email apologizing to America. Sorry about our AG. We don't like the guy either. We'll try and do better next time.
He's a national embarrassment.
We've been doing a best and then worst order, but I think that it's nice to leave on a high note. So instead of starting with the number one best Texan, we'll save her for last, that person for last. Ed, who is our number one worst Texan?
Our number one worst Texan, like Wesley said, this was tough competition this year. And I should mention back in the past when we started doing these things, we used to have a list of just 10 worst Texans. Over the year, that's evolved to be a top 10 list of 5 best and 5 worst. Try and keep it a little bit positive. But here, coming in our number one place for worst Texan, as we like to call it, our first worst, is Governor COVID himself, Greg Abbott. Now, this is a guy who had a chance. He had a chance to bring the state together and get us all on the same page, and he bungled it. And he bungled it by at first refusing to really have a stay-at-home order. And when he did issue a stay-at-home order, he refused to say it, which made it more complicated. A lot of people didn't know if it was a stay-at-home order or not. And then when local officials started to enforce mask mandates, he issued an executive order saying they couldn't issue mask mandates. And when the COVID numbers started to spike after he opened the bars, he went and blamed young people for spreading COVID when he had really just opened up the economy before it was ready. Now, incidentally, he came back and ended up issuing his own mask order after the virus had just spread throughout Texas and had gone out of control. So a lot of just really ridiculousness associated with what he did this year. I didn't even get to the other policy issues. I know Diana's got a lot to say about this, but the back and forth lawsuits over abortion care, using the pandemic to try and stop abortions, not expanding vote by mail to people in the state, and just saying that, at least we got an extra week of early vote out of it. That was a good thing. But then limiting the number of ballot drop-off locations to 1 per county. It's ridiculous. I got to hand it to him. He really worked hard for the first worst spot. And we give him a giant lump of coal at the top of the list this year.
But we might like that.
Yeah, you might like it. You're right. We talked about it last week. You should give him a giant solar panel or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that he would take offense to.
One thing I'll add about Abbott, and this has been pointed out throughout the year, is something that's kind of, I think, gotten him to the place that he is that he's so waffly. So a lot of the times people don't necessarily know, where does Abbott stand on this issue? And I wouldn't call him moderate personally, but I think some people think of him as a moderate. And so it's helped him get to the place where he is now. But this year, that did not serve him well at all. And he realized that his waffling is not leadership. It led to him being slow to make decisions. It led to him not doing what needed to be done to actually help our state. And he ended up, instead of getting criticized by one side, being criticized by both sides. So in the few areas where he did maybe do a little, gave us an extra week of early voting, for example, he got tons of pushback from the right and from far right people. But then throughout the year, he was not doing what he needed to do to protect Texans, so he was getting pushback from the left as well. So he should have just done what needed to be done, and only then would he have received criticism from one side, the far right people who are going to criticize him anyway. But instead, he chose to take the middle road. He chose to waffle on issues, and he didn't end up helping anyone. And so now everyone basically hates him. And when he's up for re-election, there's a really good chance that he could lose because of it. So he played himself this year.
Congratulations, Governor COVID. You played yourself.
Yeah, you know what? So like, he did a lot of terrible things, but he did raise the bar in one context, right? Donald Trump's entire response to the COVID has been terrible, but Abbott somehow did an even worse job than Donald Trump. Like, imagine if there's a C student who's like, hey, actually, like, you should study a little bit more. Like, you're doing too bad. Like, please study just a little bit. I can't, that happened to Abbott because of how poorly he did the entire COVID response, that Donald Trump's White House said, hey, man, do a little bit more. Just a little bit. Sure.
He's just adding with his buddy Ken Paxton on more people in leadership embarrassing us on a national scale. Like, it's just so bad. People across the whole country now know who these politicians are. And I think one of the best ways that we could help and give back to a lot of the folks on the front line is to change that leadership that is making their job so hard. And getting more civically involved and getting all of these guys that are embarrassing out of office.
Exactly.
And speaking of that, Diana, new leadership. Who's our number one Texan, our best Texan of the year?
Yes, our best Texan, which might not be a huge surprise to everyone, is she was someone who was on national television as well. Really making the entire state proud, and that is Lena Hidalgo. She also won the award of the Progressive of the Year on behalf of Progress Texas. So I had the amazing honor of being able to interview her on our behalf for our holiday party a few weeks back. And, we'll be sharing that video so you guys can rewatch a lot of her inspiring words. But yeah, basically whenever a lot of these leaders on our bad list, weren't doing their jobs, weren't leading, Lena was out there leading. She was one of the first to have a mask mandate in her county, which, she had to fight Abbott back and forth with because he, was attacking her on a lot of her, not just progressive ways of approaching public health, but her common sense ways. A lot of this that has happened didn't have to be made political. But she really, at 29 years old, is a much better leader than, most of the other GOP leaders here in Texas. And she, listened to science, which is amazing. That's so great. We need more leaders that do that. That's just, so cool. And, one of my favorite parts of, when I was able to interview her was at the end asking her, how can more young leaders, get into positions of power, especially in Texas. And she said, to bust down the doors and don't wait your turn, just do it, because there have been a lot of mistakes made, a lot of things that need fixing, like climate change and our broken, healthcare system. And young folks will be the ones that will deal with those repercussions. So, we need to take our place and lead. And it's just so inspirational. She's just so inspirational. I stand so hard.
Some other things that came up in your interview, Diana, with Lena, that I was really impressed by was the bail reform packages that she has worked on as county judge. I can't remember if that was 2019 or if that was 2020. And then, of course, let's also keep in mind that as the county executive in Harris County, overseeing Houston, has so many natural disasters that they have to steer through. So here you have a pandemic, you have hurricane season, you have these other initiatives that are very important in addition to those two other things, and you have somebody who is, in some cases, half the age of other people around the state doing twice as good of a job as any of these guys could ever expect to do. Very impressive person, whether as far as state and local leaders goes. I mean, she really stood out this year.
Yeah, I think that anyone who was in that position, this would have been such a difficult year. But the way Lena Hidalgo handled it, it just made it seem like she's been doing this her whole life. She just, she rose to the moment. And she showed what a true leader looks like in our state. And one thing I'll add is that I think she has a great political future ahead of her. I'm really excited to see where she goes. And I think we should all be keeping an eye on Lena Hidalgo.
100%. Well, so there you have it. Those are our best and worst Texans of the year. I can say for the whole team, doing these happy hours has been a lot of fun for us, and it's a little bittersweet that this is our last one of the year. But don't worry, because 2021 it's right around the corner, and we'll be back. So, any last words, Diana, Ed, Wesley?
I want to say cheers to kicking 2020 to the curb. I hope you all have your happy hour. I have my tea and my Santa mug.
Tea.
But cheers.
Cheers.
Goodbye, 2020.
Yes, and happy holidays to everyone.
Yes. Please stay safe this holiday season. Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. We couldn't do this without you. All of the thousands of subscribers we have out there, and we'll see you soon.
See you in 2021. Bye, y'all.
Bye.